We think it lived up to the ideals of the American trade union movement and what our members in Arkansas really wanted us to do.
And I know you said you will let some endangered Democrats fend for themselves this time, Democrats who have not taken the votes that you agree with. Who are some of those Democrats do you think should fend for themselves?
I'm not going to get into that. You know, we're going to be in 25 states, and we're going to be very aggressive in 25 states. We're going to play in congressional races, we're going to play in Senate races, we're going to play in gubernatorial races, or we're going to play in state legislative races. And those people that support us on the issues, then we're going to support them. But we're not going to take precious resources and use it for those candidates who don't support us just so we can say that we supported them. We won't do that.
What's the determinant factor for you getting involved in these 25 states?
In the 25 states that we're playing in?
Yeah.
Well, it was a number of factors. It was where we have friends, where we think it's an important or strategic race is being run. We have a number of factors that we use to decide which one of the states and which one of the races we'll ultimately play in. But we're in 25 of them, and we'll play congressional, senatorial, gubernatorial, and at state legislative races.
Back to the idea that you say we need more stimulus. Does the Obama administration deserve any blame for not doing a better job in shaping the debate? Because it does seem that the Republicans are winning when it comes, at least the debate part of it, and shaping how voters are thinking about it in terms of like worry about the deficits. Polls show that voters are very concerned about spending, and it's getting to a point where it's incredibly difficult for Democrats to pass more spending bills. Like every time it's sort of a knockdown, drag-out fight. Does the Obama administration deserve any blame for not doing a better job defining the debate?
I think we all deserve some of the blame. That includes members of the press who I think haven't done a very good job talking about stimulus.
It's easy to blame the press.
Well, especially when it's accurate. I'm not blaming you specifically, Victoria, but whenever the press doesn't talk about truly the economic issues, but when somebody makes a bold assertion and they say we have a deficit problem, don't spend, and it's reported we have a deficit problem, when that's not true, we don't have a short-term deficit problem. You know that, he knows that, I know that, and he knows that, and every economist in the country knows that. Yet you've not made the case. So, yeah, the Obama says they deserve some of the blame for it. The labor movement deserves part of the blame because we haven't done enough job. You deserve part of the blame because the press hasn't done part of the job. And quite frankly, the ones that have been masterful of this are the Republican spin machine because they've done a wonderful job of creating fiction and making it seem like fact. We have a jobs crisis in this country. We don't have a deficit crisis in this country. And yet people try to make them equal. And by the way, I've knocked on thousands of doors in the elections, and I have yet to knock on a door where someone comes out and says, the deficit is the biggest problem. I'll tell you what they tell me. The biggest problem is job creation, health care, pension security, and education. Those are the things I hear at the door when we knock on the door. And we knock on about 25 to 30,000 a week.
About 10 more minutes with our guest, Richard Trumka of the AFL-CIO. Back to the jobs numbers specifically. 71,000 new jobs, private sector created in the month of June. Can you give us a number where the AFL-CIO will be happy when that number gets to X per month? Then we see real job growth.
First of all, we need between 125 and 140,000 jobs a month to keep up with population growth, not to reduce the deficit. So it has to go above that just to start reducing the deficit. We'll be happy whenever we're creating 500,000 jobs a month, and we'll be very happy whenever the 11 million jobs that we lost since the recession are eliminated. That's when we'll be back there. When we have everybody who wants to work gets a chance to work, that's when there's a recovery. And that's how we'll define a recovery. The recovery doesn't mean GDP's growing up or the stock market's moving up. Because if you've lost your job, you've lost your home, or you're in a chance of losing your home, you can't send your kid to college. You have to put off education. You have to put off home buying. You have to put off parenthood, and you have to put off retirement because you don't have the finances, the resources to do it. There's no recovery. So our definition of recovery is when everybody wants to work back to work, that's when the economy will be recovered.
Going back to politics for a second, earlier this year at the National Press Club, you said that 2010 could be a repeat of 1994. Sitting here 8 months later, do you think it could be even worse for Democrats than 1994? And how many seats do you expect Democrats to lose in the House and Senate?
Well, mathematically, it's possible for the Democrats to lose control of the House. But in actuality, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen because, one, the Republican Party has no program. All they've done is said, no, don't vote for them, vote for us. And if you see the new polls, the things that we're seeing, that's starting to wear very thin and people are starting to shift back. We're going to spend all of our time and effort educating our members at the grassroots level. We'll be leafleting and we'll be doing door knocks, we'll be doing face-to-face contact, and we'll try to create the situation where they're excited again and they come out to vote. I think they'll lose some seats. I don't think a lot of seats, as many people believe, and I definitely think there will not be a Speaker Boehner after the elections are over. There'll be a Speaker Pelosi.
And one specific race that has national interest is the Florida Senate race. I know the AFL-CIO has endorsed Kendrick Meek in that race, but I know Governor Charlie Crist has also reached out to you and courted your organization. If Kendrick Meek does not survive the primary against Jeff Green, would your organization support Mr. Green, or would you consider supporting Charlie Crist's independent bid?
I think that'll all depend on our members down there. Once again, all of those endorsements come from the local membership, and I think that's where you'll see it happen.
What are you hearing from them on Charlie Crist? Could they support him in a general?
I think that's a possibility. I'm not saying it's a probability. I'm saying it's a possibility. We'll see what happens after the election is over. We've endorsed a candidate. We're supporting that candidate. And hopefully that candidate will ultimately win. If the candidate doesn't, then we have another decision to make, and our members will make that decision.
What will be your priorities going, after the election next year? I mean, we've talked about the Employee Free Choice Act, but what specifically are other legislative priorities that your group has?
Jobs, and more jobs.
But anything specific?
Jobs. Anything that will create jobs. Okay. Green jobs, energy jobs. Jobs of the future, anything that we can do. Manufacturing, we'll be doing policies that will help create manufacturing jobs. We'll be looking at tax policies, so that taxes that encourage people to produce here and stop the outsourcing that we can do. All of those come together. Even comprehensive immigration reform figures into job creation out into the future. Because as the system that we have right now is so broken, it's used to create a permanent underclass of workers that are used to drive wages down and prevent American wages from coming up to where we need them to be, so that we can create an economy that works for everybody.
Do you think this proposal to stop giving automatic citizenship to children born in the United States has any legs?
No, because there'd be a lot of people, probably most of us here, that wouldn't qualify either. I think if it's somebody's born here, they're a U.S. citizen. What other criteria would you use to say you're a U.S. citizen? That's always been the best. In fact, that's how I'm here. I was born here, first generation born here, and I think it's a good litmus test. If you're born here, you're a U.S. citizen. It's what the rest of the world says.
About 5 more minutes with Richard Trumka. You heard from the president last week. You were quoted in the paper saying he lit a fire under the base at that executive committee meeting. What did you hear from members after that meeting, and what do you specifically expect the president to do for the AFL-CIO when it comes to campaigning?
Well, first of all, he did a great job. He talked about the economy in terms of being very, very hopeful and working with us to do job creation, working with us to do help in manufacturing, working with us on tax policy, working with us to create jobs in a multitude of different ways. Clean, green jobs that can be the jobs of the future, working with us to make sure that R&D stay in this country, which is our lifeline, as you well know. He did a great job with all of those, talking about those and talking about the future where he will actually campaign, places he would campaign on those issues, which is what we wanted to hear. We don't really care about people as much as we care about issues. We want to support people who support our issues. He definitely supported our issues.
What Democrat are you most worried about? Vulnerable Democratic incumbent that you are most worried about this cycle and trying to save as an advocate for your guys' cause?
That would be about the worst thing I could do, draw a big bullseye on somebody's chest. There's a number in the House. I mean, close friends in the House and a few in the Senate that are very, very close friends and have been good for working people that we're concerned about, and we're going to work hard.
Any states or any more specificity on who, though, and what states or a certain region that you're worried about, or
across the country, I mean, there are races within several states. And you go from California to New York to Ohio to Pennsylvania. There are races in Missouri, Michigan. There are races in those places that we're concerned about, that we've actually focused on, and will give a top priority to.
How worried are you about the majority leader, Harry Reid, and his reelection prospect?
Oh, I think Harry Reid gets reelected. I mean, the woman that running against him, I mean, God, she's been like the gift that keeps on giving. She's just made such, how can I say this politically correct, statements that showed a tremendous lack of understanding of the economy.
But she's still close in the polls. I mean, that is still a very tight race that he could lose.
Absolutely, and we still have 87 days to go.
How active are you all in Nevada in that race?
Very active. We'll be active. There are 6 states that we call our firewall states. Nevada's one of those firewall states. We'll be very, very active.
We have a minute or two left, so we'll let our reporters wrap up with a couple of final questions. David Catanese, if you want to start.
What are those 6 firewall states?
California, Illinois, Nevada, New York, Ohio, and Pennsylvania.
I'm just curious quickly, why those 6? Why are they the firewall?
Because if we do our jobs in those 6 states, there is no Speaker Boehner, and there is no Leader McConnell.
Victoria McGrane.
Is the union movement losing relevancy?
Are we losing relevancy? Yeah. I don't think so
at all.
Less
people are members of unions.
Well, if you look at the polls, more people each year keep saying we'd join a union tomorrow if we had the chance. Unfortunately, they won't get the chance. Are we relevant? You bet we are. More relevant today. Ask those 29 miners down at Upper Branch Mine that got killed because their employer didn't care about health and safety, if a union would have been helpful there. Ask teachers around the country, ask any group of workers around the country if they think they need more of a voice, so that we can actually collaborate with our employers. And here's why we're the most relevant. If we're going to compete in a global economy right now, it's going to take workers and employers coming together to face that competition. And the best way you do that is when you have a structure and when you have a strong group, so that the workers and the employer come to the table as equals, not as parent and child, but as equals. That only happens when you have a union. And for that reason alone, if for no other reason, we're going to be relevant for a long time, because the global economy continues to make us relevant.
Real quickly on mine safety, you mentioned the Big Branch mine. Does the AFL-CIO expect new mine safety legislation by the end of this session?
Hopefully, yes. We're pushing very hard to get it done, and we think we can get it done.
Joining us this morning, Victoria McGrane of Dow Jones Newswire's economics reporter, and David Catanese, political reporter for Politico, and our guest, Richard Trumka, the president of the AFL-CIO. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it very much.